He is back at his desk, working on a new design project. He glances at Olivia, who is sitting nearby, smiling at him. He solves his Rubik's Cube, finding order and control in the chaos of the world. He makes eye contact with Sam, who gives him a thumbs up. Ethan smiles, feeling a sense of acceptance and connection he has never felt before. "You okay, man?" Sam asked, approaching his desk. Ethan had been staring blankly at his monitor for a few minutes, his Rubik's Cube clicking softly in his hands. "Yeah, just thinking," Ethan replied, forcing a smile. "Thinking about how crazy things have been." "Crazy good, I hope," Sam chuckled, leaning against Ethan's desk. "Definitely good," Ethan affirmed, looking at Olivia, who was now deeply engrossed in her work. "I never thought I'd be here, accepted happy myself." "Well, you earned it," Sam said, clapping him on the shoulder. "You stood up for yourself, for Olivia, for everyone who's ever felt like they had to hide who they are." Ethan nodded, his gaze returning to his Rubik's Cube. "It's still hard sometimes, The anxiety, the sensory overload, the need for routine. It doesn't just go away." "Of course not," Sam said understandingly. "It's a part of you, Ethan, but it doesn't define you. You're a talented designer, a loyal friend, and a courageous person. And those are the things that matter." Ethan smiled, his eyes meeting Sam's. "Thanks, Sam. I don't know what I'd do without you." "Anytime, man," Sam replied. "Now get back to work. We've got deadlines to meet, and I hear the new project is pretty cool." Ethan chuckled, turning back to his monitor. He took a deep breath, feeling a sense of calm and purpose wash over him. He was no longer hiding, no longer pretending to be someone he wasn't. He was Ethan, a man with autism, and he was finally okay with that. The office noise still buzzed around him, the fluorescent lights still flickered, and the demands of his job still loomed large. But now, he had the tools, the support, and the self-acceptance to navigate it all. He had found order in the chaos, connection in the isolation, and truth in the shadows. And as he began to work, his Rubik's Cube resting peacefully on his desk, he knew that he was finally home. The end. He glances at Olivia, who is sitting nearby, smiling at him. He solves his Rubik's Cube, finding order and control in the chaos of the world. He makes eye contact with Sam, who gives him a thumbs up. Ethan smiles, feeling a sense of acceptance and connection he has never felt before. "You okay, man?" Sam asked, approaching his desk. Ethan had been staring blankly at his monitor for a few minutes, his Rubik's Cube clicking softly in his hands. "Yeah, just thinking," Ethan replied, forcing a smile. "Thinking about how crazy things have been." "Crazy good, I hope," Sam chuckled, leaning against Ethan's desk. "Definitely good," Ethan affirmed, looking at Olivia, who was now deeply engrossed in her work. "I never thought I'd be here, accepted happy myself." "Well, you earned it," Sam said, clapping him on the shoulder. "You stood up for yourself, for Olivia, for everyone who's ever felt like they had to hide who they are." Ethan nodded, his gaze returning to his Rubik's Cube. "It's still hard sometimes, The anxiety, the sensory overload, the need for routine. It doesn't just go away." "Of course not," Sam said understandingly. "It's a part of you, Ethan, but it doesn't define you. You're a talented designer, a loyal friend, and a courageous person. And those are the things that matter." Ethan smiled, his eyes meeting Sam's. "Thanks, Sam. I don't know what I'd do without you." "Anytime, man," Sam replied. "Now get back to work. We've got deadlines to meet, and I hear the new project is pretty cool." Ethan chuckled, turning back to his monitor. He took a deep breath, feeling a sense of calm and purpose wash over him. He was no longer hiding, no longer pretending to be someone he wasn't. He was Ethan, a man with autism, and he was finally okay with that. The office noise still buzzed around him, the fluorescent lights still flickered, and the demands of his job still loomed large. But now, he had the tools, the support, and the self-acceptance to navigate it all. He had found order in the chaos, connection in the isolation, and truth in the shadows. And as he began to work, his Rubik's Cube resting peacefully on his desk, he knew that he was finally home. The end. "Okay, I understand. I need to start the story with a powerful line of dialogue and then establish the context of the situation through narration, showing and telling, and continue the story according to the outline and instructions." "Damn it, why me?" Caleb muttered, staring at the faded X-ray on the light board. The year was 1968, and Caleb was a young, idealistic black doctor working at a clinic in Macon County, Alabama, a place where the weight of racial segregation and medical distrust hung heavy in the air. Caleb's brother, also a doctor, had died mysteriously a few years prior after raising questions about some of the practices at the clinic. That loss fueled Caleb's desire to serve his community, but also left him with a gnawing sense of unease. He wanted to believe in the system, but the whispers and shadows around the clinic kept him on edge. Caleb deeply desired to heal the wounds of his community, wounds that ran far deeper than any physical ailment. He wanted to earn their trust, to prove that he could be the doctor they deserved. He reviewed the X-ray again, a late-stage syphilis infection ravaging the man's body. It was one of many similar cases he'd seen recently, all black men, all from the same small, impoverished community. Something wasn't adding up. "Another one, Dr. Caleb?" Nurse Evelyn asked, her voice laced with a weariness that mirrored his own. Evelyn had been at the clinic for decades and had seen it all. She was a pillar of the community, but Caleb sensed a guardedness in her, a reluctance to speak openly. "Yes, Evelyn," Caleb sighed. "Mr. Johnson. Says he's been coming here for years, getting special treatment. But this is beyond neglect. This is deliberate." Evelyn avoided his gaze, busying herself with paperwork. "The county provides what it can, doctor. These men, they ain't got much to begin with." Caleb slammed his fist on the desk, the sound echoing in the small office. "That's not an excuse, Evelyn. They deserve proper treatment just like anyone else." "Easy now, son," a deep voice rumbled from the doorway. Dr. Thompson, the clinic's senior physician, a white man with a paternal demeanor, entered the room. "What's all the commotion?" "Dr. Thompson," Caleb said, trying to control his anger. "I'm concerned about the syphilis cases. They're all late stage, and the patients say they've been receiving treatment here for years. But there's no record of penicillin being administered." Dr. Thompson chuckled, placing a hand on Caleb's shoulder. "Now, Caleb, don't go jumping to conclusions. These men, they don't always follow instructions. Maybe they stopped taking their medicine, maybe they went to some back alley quack." "But the records, sir," Caleb persisted. "There's no documentation of any treatment at all." Dr. Thompson's smile faltered slightly. "We're a little behind on paperwork, that's all. I assure you, these men are getting the best care we can provide." Caleb looked from Dr. Thompson to Nurse Evelyn, sensing a silent exchange between them. He knew something was wrong, deeply wrong, but he couldn't put his finger on it. "I want to review all the patient files," Caleb stated, his voice firm. "Every man diagnosed with syphilis in the last 10 years. Dr. Thompson's hand tightened on Caleb's shoulder. "That won't be necessary, Caleb. I trust you have more pressing matters to attend to." "With all due respect, sir," Caleb replied, meeting Dr. Thompson's gaze. "This is my responsibility. These are my patients." Dr. Thompson stared at Caleb for a long moment, his eyes unreadable. Then, he released his grip and stepped back. "Very well, Caleb, but don't go stirring up trouble where there isn't any." As Dr. Thompson walked away, Caleb felt a chill run down his spine. He knew he was stepping into dangerous territory, but he couldn't ignore the nagging feeling that something sinister was happening at the clinic. He had to find out the truth, no matter the cost. This happens. But Caleb's deep sense of loyalty to his community and his desire to prove himself as a capable doctor clashed with the growing unease he felt about the discrepancies in the patient records. Therefore, he resolved to investigate further, driven by a need to uncover the truth and ensure his patients were receiving the care they deserved, but also knowing that doing so could put him at odds with his superiors and potentially endanger his career. Approx. 600 words. Scene: clinic records room late at night. Caleb found himself alone in the clinic's dusty records room, the only light source coming from a small desk lamp. The air was thick with the smell of old paper and forgotten secrets. He began pulling files, his hands trembling slightly as he searched for the syphilis cases. Hours passed, and the stack of files grew taller. As he meticulously examined each record, he noticed a pattern. The men diagnosed with syphilis were all black, and their treatment plans were vague or non-existent. There were notes about observation and monitoring, but no mention of penicillin, the standard treatment for the disease. He found a separate, locked cabinet labeled Special Projects. He tried the handle, but it was locked. He glanced nervously at the door, his heart pounding in his chest. He knew he was crossing a line, potentially risking his career and even his safety. But the faces of his patients, their suffering and their trust in him, fueled his determination. He pulled out his pocket knife and carefully picked the lock. The cabinet creaked open, revealing a stack of manila folders. Each folder contained a patient's name and a series of cryptic notes. Caleb grabbed one at random, Mr. Isaiah Washington. The notes indicated that Mr. Washington had been diagnosed with bad blood, which was a common term for syphilis in the rural South decades ago, but had never received proper treatment. Instead, he had been given placebos and told that he was receiving special vitamins. Caleb felt a wave of nausea wash over him. This wasn't just neglect, it was a deliberate act of deception. He continued to search and came across a file that was marked under his brother's name. It mentioned that his brother had made similar discoveries and had wanted to expose the truth. The file ended abruptly with a note that said, "Problem solved." Caleb realized that his brother's death was not an accident. He had been silenced. This happens. But as Caleb pieced together the horrifying truth about the Tuskegee study and the deliberate withholding of treatment from Black men, he also uncovered evidence suggesting his brother's death was not accidental, creating a profound personal stake in exposing the conspiracy. Therefore, torn between his desire to honor his brother's memory and his growing fear for his own safety, Caleb wrestled with the decision of what to do with the damning information he had uncovered, knowing that exposing the truth could have devastating consequences for himself and his community. Approx. 600 words. Scene: Caleb's home night. Caleb sat at his kitchen table, the damning files spread before him. The weight of the truth was almost unbearable. He thought of Mr. Washington, his gentle smile and unwavering faith in the doctors at the clinic. He thought of all the other men, suffering needlessly, their lives slowly being destroyed by a disease that could be easily cured. He thought of his brother, his idealism, his unwavering commitment to justice, and the price he paid for it. He picked up his brother's medical journal, its leather cover worn and cracked with age. He opened it to a random page, his eyes falling on a passage his brother had written. "The oath we take as doctors is sacred. We must never betray the trust of our patients, no matter the cost." Caleb closed the journal, his heart pounding in his chest. He knew what he had to do. He had to expose the truth, no matter the risk. But how? He was just one man against a powerful institution, against a system that seemed determined to protect its secrets. He needed help. He thought of Sarah, a childhood friend who had become a journalist for a local newspaper. She was smart, courageous, and fiercely committed to justice. He hadn't seen her in years, but he knew he could trust her. He walked to the phone, his hand trembling as he dialed her number. The phone rang several times before she answered, her voice groggy with sleep. "Sarah, it's Caleb," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "I need your help. I found something terrible." "Caleb, what's wrong?" Sarah asked, her voice sharpening with concern. "I can't explain it over the phone," Caleb said. "Can you meet me tomorrow morning?" "Where?" Sarah asked. "The old oak tree by the river," Caleb replied. "The one where we used to play as kids." "Okay," Sarah said. "I'll be there." Caleb hung up the phone, feeling a glimmer of hope. He wasn't alone anymore. He had Sarah. And together, they would find a way to expose the shadows of truth that had been lurking in Macon County for far too long. This happens. But Caleb's decision to confide in Sarah, a childhood friend turned journalist, offered a glimmer of hope, but also increased the risk of exposure and retaliation from those involved in the study, forcing him to trust someone with potentially devastating information. Therefore, Caleb, driven by a renewed sense of purpose and a desperate need for help, prepared to meet Sarah, knowing that their conversation could set in motion a chain of events that would change their lives and the lives of countless others forever. Approx. 600 words. Scene: the old oak tree by the river morning. The morning air was crisp and cool as Caleb waited beneath the old oak tree. The river flowed gently beside him, its waters reflecting the rising sun. This was a place of childhood memories, a place of innocence and trust. But today, it was a meeting place for a dangerous truth. He saw Sarah walking towards him, her face etched with concern. She was dressed in a simple cotton dress, her hair pulled back in a no-nonsense bun. She looked like a woman who was ready for a fight. "Caleb," she said, her voice soft but firm. "What's going on? You sounded so worried on the phone." Caleb took a deep breath and began to explain, telling her everything he had discovered at the clinic about the syphilis cases, about the lack of treatment, about the locked cabinet, about his brother's death. As he spoke, Sarah's eyes widened with horror. She scribbled notes furiously, her pen flying across the page. "This is unbelievable," she said when Caleb had finished. "A government study, deliberately withholding treatment from Black men. This is a scandal of epic proportions." "I know," Caleb said, "and my brother. I think he found out about it too. That's why they killed him." Sarah placed a hand on Caleb's arm, her eyes filled with compassion. "I'm so sorry, Caleb. I can't imagine what you're going through." "I don't know what to do," Caleb said, his voice filled with despair. "I can't just sit back and let this happen, but I'm afraid. They killed my brother, they could kill me too." "We'll expose them, Caleb," Sarah said, her voice filled with determination. "We'll take this story to the national media. We'll make sure the world knows what's happening in Macon County." "But it's so dangerous," Caleb said. "They're powerful people." "We have to do it," Sarah said. "For your brother, for those men, for our community. We can't let them get away with this." Caleb looked at Sarah, seeing the fire in her eyes. He knew she was right. They had to fight. They had to expose the truth. He took a deep breath, feeling a surge of courage. "Okay," he said. "Let's do it." This happens. But Sarah's unwavering commitment to exposing the truth, while inspiring, presented Caleb with a moral dilemma: risk his own safety and the well-being of his community by challenging powerful institutions, or remain silent and allow the abuse to continue. Therefore, Caleb, emboldened by Sarah's courage and driven by a desire for justice, agreed to work with her to expose the Tuskegee study, knowing that their actions would have far-reaching consequences and could potentially put their lives in danger. Approx. 600 words. "Okay, I understand. I need to continue the story, focusing on the rising action and the challenges Caleb and Sarah face as they try to expose the Tuskegee study." Scene: Sarah's newspaper office day. Sarah's newspaper office was a small, cluttered space filled with stacks of papers, overflowing ashtrays, and the constant clatter of typewriters. It was a hive of activity, buzzing with reporters chasing stories and editors barking orders. Sarah led Caleb to her small desk in the corner, a sanctuary amidst the chaos. "Okay, Caleb," she said, her voice businesslike. "We need to gather as much evidence as possible. Patient records, testimonies, anything that can corroborate your story." "I have copies of some of the patient files," Caleb said, pulling them from his briefcase. "But I couldn't take everything. It was too risky." "These are a good start," Sarah said, examining the files. "But we need more. We need to talk to the men who are suffering from this disease. We need to hear their stories." "That's going to be difficult," Caleb said. "They're afraid. They trust the doctors at the clinic. They won't want to talk to us." "We'll find a way," Sarah said, her eyes gleaming with determination. "We have to gain their trust. We have to show them that we're on their side." Over the next few days, Caleb and Sarah worked tirelessly, interviewing patients, poring over records, and piecing together the puzzle of the Tuskegee study. They faced constant obstacles, from suspicious clinic staff to reluctant patients. But they persevered, driven by their commitment to justice. They met with Mr. Isaiah Washington, the elderly man whose file Caleb had found in the locked cabinet. He was initially hesitant to speak, but Caleb's gentle demeanor and Sarah's persuasive questioning eventually won him over. "I don't understand why they're doing this to us," Mr. Washington said, his voice weak and raspy. "We trusted them. We thought they were helping us." "They lied to you, Mr. Washington," Sarah said, her voice filled with anger. "They deliberately withheld treatment from you. They let you suffer." "What can we do?" Mr. Washington asked, his eyes filled with despair. "We're just poor Black folks. No one will listen to us." "We'll make them listen," Sarah said, her voice ringing with conviction. "We'll tell your story to the world." As Caleb and Sarah gathered more evidence, they began to feel the pressure closing in around them. They received anonymous phone calls, warning them to stop their investigation. They were followed on the street. They knew they were being watched. This happens. But as Caleb and Sarah delved deeper into the investigation, gathering evidence and interviewing patients, they faced increasing pressure and threats from those involved in the study, forcing them to operate in secrecy and fear for their safety. Therefore, driven by their commitment to exposing the truth and bringing justice to the victims, Caleb and Sarah continued their investigation, knowing that they were walking a dangerous path and that their every move was being watched. Approx. 600 words. Scene: Caleb's home night. Caleb sat at his kitchen table, reviewing the notes from his interviews with the patients. He was exhausted, both physically and emotionally. The weight of the study was crushing him. He heard a knock at the door. He peered through the peephole and saw Dr. Thompson standing on his porch. His heart pounded in his chest. He knew this was it. They had found out about his investigation. He hesitated for a moment, then opened the door. "Dr. Thompson," he said, trying to keep his voice steady. "What can I do for you?" "Caleb," Dr. Thompson said, his voice surprisingly gentle. "Can I come in? I want to talk to you." Caleb stepped aside, allowing Dr. Thompson to enter his small apartment. Dr. Thompson looked around the room, his eyes taking in the simple furnishings and the stacks of medical books. "You've made quite a home for yourself here, Caleb," he said. "Thank you, sir," Caleb replied. "I've been hearing things, Caleb," Dr. Thompson said, his voice turning serious. "Rumors about you asking questions, snooping around in patient files." Caleb remained silent, waiting for Dr. Thompson to continue. "I'm disappointed, Caleb," Dr. Thompson said. "I thought you were one of us. I thought you understood the importance of what we're doing here." "What are you doing, Dr. Thompson?" Caleb asked, his voice rising with anger. "You're deliberately withholding treatment from these men. You're letting them suffer and die." Dr. Thompson sighed, shaking his head. "You don't understand, Caleb. This is for the greater good. We're studying the natural progression of the disease. We're gathering valuable data that will help us understand syphilis and develop better treatments in the future." "At what cost, Dr. Thompson?" Caleb asked. "At the cost of these men's lives, at the cost of their trust." "Sometimes sacrifices have to be made, Caleb," Dr. Thompson said, "for the advancement of science." "That's not science, Dr. Thompson," Caleb said. "That's murder." Dr. Thompson's face hardened. "You're playing a dangerous game, Caleb," he said. "You don't know who you're messing with." "I know that you're hurting people," Caleb said, "and I'm not going to let you get away with it." Dr. Thompson stared at Caleb for a long moment, his eyes filled with anger. Then he turned and walked out of the apartment, slamming the door behind him. Caleb stood there, trembling with fear and adrenaline. He knew he had crossed a line. There was no turning back now. He was in a fight for his life. This happens. But Dr. Thompson's visit and veiled threats confirmed Caleb's worst fears and intensified the danger, forcing him to confront the powerful forces behind the Tuskegee study and the lengths they would go to protect their secrets. Therefore, Caleb, now fully aware of the risks he faced, resolved to protect the evidence he had gathered and to continue working with Sarah to expose the truth, knowing that his life and the lives of those he cared about were in danger. Approx. 600 words. Next. "Okay, I understand. I will provide a new response that addresses all the feedback points, follows the original prompt's instructions, and delivers a much more detailed and compelling story concept." Title: * The Weight of Silence. Genre: * character-driven tragic drama. II: cinematic inspiration and analysis. Gone Girl 2014. Inspired by the unreliable narration and how hidden truths can unravel relationships, particularly focusing on the performance of identity and how people construct facades. Prisoners 2013 takes inspiration from the moral ambiguity of justice and how far someone will go when driven by desperation, blurring ethical lines. The Banshees of Inisherin 2022 explores the devastating consequences of isolation, focusing on fractured relationships and the search for meaning. III: Story Foundation. Story Foundation, real-life incident. The Tuskegee Syphilis Study, 1930-1972. This infamous study, conducted by the U.S. Public Health Service, involved hundreds of African American men in Alabama who were deliberately left untreated for syphilis to observe the disease's natural progression. The men were not informed of their diagnosis or given proper treatment, leading to severe health consequences and death. This event guarantees profound conflict, high stakes, and immense emotional depth, centering on themes of betrayal, justice, and the long-lasting impact of unethical actions. Time and location: Macon County, Alabama, 1968, height of the Civil Rights Movement. Context: the story unfolds against the backdrop of racial inequality and mistrust in the American South. The Civil Rights Movement is gaining momentum, but deeply ingrained prejudices persist. The African American community is wary of institutions, particularly those associated with the government. Guarantee of conflict: External: the protagonist discovers the truth about the study and must decide whether to expose it, risking his safety and the well-being of his community. Internal: the protagonist grapples with the moral implications of the study, his personal connection to the victims, and the potential repercussions of his actions. Emotional: the protagonist witnesses the suffering of the men involved in the study, experiences betrayal by those he trusted, and struggles to reconcile his loyalty to his community with his desire for justice. Guaranteed stakes: life or death. The untreated syphilis leads to severe health consequences and death for the participants. Reputational: exposing the study could lead to professional and social ostracization for the protagonist. Communal: the revelation could shatter the community's trust in the medical establishment and create further divisions. Emotional depth: the story explores themes of racial injustice, medical ethics, betrayal, and the lasting impact of trauma on individuals and communities. Justification of characters and plot: the real-life incident provides a solid foundation for the characters' motivations, conflicts, and actions. It ensures that the story is grounded in reality and carries significant weight. Inspiration: Miss Evers' Boys, 1997, a play and film depicting the ethical dilemmas faced by a nurse involved in the Tuskegee study. Something the Lord Made, 2004, explores the complex relationship between a white surgeon and his African-American lab technician as they pioneer a groundbreaking heart surgery. Logline: in 1968 Alabama, setting: a racially segregated and medically distrustful Macon County. Protagonist: Caleb, a young, idealistic black doctor haunted by his brother's death and driven by a fierce loyalty to his community, is dissatisfied due to deep desire, his inability to heal the deep-seated wounds of his community and his growing suspicion that something is amiss at the local clinic. But when incident, he uncovers a decades-long government study deliberately withholding syphilis treatment from black men, faces a desperate need to deep desire. Expose the truth and save his patients from further suffering, he is faced with a moral crossroad. Uphold his oath to protect his patients or remain silent to avoid the wrath of powerful institutions. Choice 1. Initially agreeing to stay silent, fearing for his career and the safety of his family, to address the desperate need. This choice leads to consequences: rising guilt, the worsening health of his patients, and the erosion of trust from his community, and potentially reveals unintended consequence. The study is more deeply entrenched and far-reaching than he initially thought, implicating people he trusts and putting him in direct danger. This sets up the story motion going to a new goal they must goal. Gather irrefutable evidence and expose the study to the national media. Before stakes. His patients die, his career is ruined, and he becomes a target of powerful forces seeking to bury the truth. Many middle beats and events. With setbacks and many wins, including finding allies, facing threats, and uncovering disturbing details about the study's origins and motivations. This leads to resolution. Caleb makes the ultimate sacrifice to expose the truth, bringing the study to an end and sparking national outrage, but at a great personal cost. Hash external layer, asterisk. 1. Plot asterisk. Asterisk inciting incident. Asterisk Caleb discovers discrepancies in patient records and overhears suspicious conversations among senior medical staff. Conflict and stakes. Asterisk Caleb faces threats from those involved in the study and must navigate a web of deceit and corruption to expose the truth. The stakes include the lives of his patients and his own safety. Asterisk rising action. Asterisk Caleb secretly investigates the study, gathering evidence, seeking allies within the community, and facing increasing threats and intimidation. Climax and resolution. Asterisk Caleb leaks the evidence to a national journalist, exposing the study to the world. He faces backlash and risks his career, but ultimately brings the study to an end and secures justice for the victims. 2. Chekhov's gun, asterisk. Object, a worn, leather-bound medical journal belonging to Caleb's deceased brother, a doctor who died under mysterious circumstances. Foreshadowing, asterisk early scenes show Caleb cherishing the journal, reading his brother's notes, and feeling a sense of responsibility to uphold his legacy. The journal contains cryptic entries hinting at unethical practices at the clinic. Payoff, asterisk the journal contains crucial evidence that Caleb uses to expose the Tuskegee study, revealing that his brother may have been silenced for questioning the study's ethics. 3 memorable iconic moments, asterisk. Caleb secretly photographing patient files late at night in the clinic, juxtaposed with scenes of the men suffering from the effects of untreated syphilis. Caleb confronting a senior doctor involved in the study, leading to a tense and emotionally charged exchange. Caleb making the decision to leak the evidence to the press, knowing the personal and professional consequences. A community meeting where the men involved in the study and their families express their grief, anger, and desire for justice. 4 world building, asterisk. Setting and atmosphere, asterisk. Time, asterisk 1968, height of the civil rights movement. Location, asterisk Macon County, Alabama, a rural, impoverished area deeply entrenched in racial segregation and inequality. The setting is characterized by dusty roads and dilapidated homes, segregated businesses and public facilities, a pervasive sense of mistrust and suspicion. Context, asterisk. The civil rights movement is gaining momentum, but progress is slow and met with resistance. The Black community is wary of institutions, particularly those associated with the government and the medical establishment. Local economy relies on agriculture, with many Black residents working as sharecroppers and tenant farmers. Actual people, asterisk. The story could draw inspiration from real-life figures involved in the Tuskegee study, such as Dr. Eunice Rivers, the African-American nurse who played a key role in the study. It could also incorporate elements of the struggles faced by civil rights activists in the South during this period. Asterisk going deeper, asterisk. Explore the social dynamics of the Black community, including the role of the church, family structures, and community leaders. Examine the economic disparities between Black and white residents and the impact of poverty on health outcomes. Investigate the history of medical racism in the United States and the legacy of mistrust it has created. Inspiration, asterisk. Eyes on the Prize, documentary series, provides a comprehensive overview of the civil rights movement. The Immortal Life of Henrietta Lacks, book and film, explores the ethical issues surrounding the use of biological samples from African American patients. Authenticity, asterisk use period-appropriate language, clothing, and customs to create a believable world. Research the social and political climate of the time to accurately portray the challenges faced by Black residents in the South. Character revelation, asterisk Caleb's interactions with his patients, his colleagues, and his family reveal his deep sense of compassion, his unwavering commitment to justice, and his internal struggles. Symbolism, asterisk. The medical journal represents Caleb's brother's legacy and his own responsibility to uphold ethical standards. The clinic symbolizes the broken promise of healthcare and the betrayal of trust. The dusty roads represent the long and arduous journey towards justice. Dialogue and subtext, asterisk use dialogue to reveal characters' beliefs, motivations, and prejudices. Employ subtext to hint at hidden truths and create tension. 5 key points of opportunities to change choices. Asterisk. Point 1. The wound and the initial neglect. Asterisk. Caleb carries the wound of his brother's mysterious death, which he suspects was related to his questioning of unethical practices at the clinic. This leads to a lie to himself that he can trust the medical establishment, neglecting his instinct to question authority. He is presented with a choice to investigate his brother's death further, but chooses to focus on his work, reinforcing the pattern of neglect, driven by fear of what he might uncover. Point 2. Midpoint revelation and shift. Asterisk. Caleb uncovers a hidden file detailing the early stages of the Tuskegee study, confirming his worst suspicions. He is presented with a choice to either bury the information or to delve deeper, risking his career and safety. This involves questioning the lie and feeling the pressure of his brother's unsolved death. Point 3. Catalyst characters influence. Asterisk. Sarah, a local journalist and childhood friend, encourages Caleb to expose the truth, challenging his complacency and fear. Caleb is presented with a choice to either resist Sarah's influence or to embrace her guidance, further destabilizing the lie and creating internal conflict regarding his brother's death. Point 4. Internal struggle and moral decision. Asterisk. Caleb faces a profound moral dilemma: expose the study and risk his career and community standing, or remain silent and allow the abuse to continue. This choice intensifies the pressure on his wound and the lie, bringing his brother's death into sharper focus. Point 5. Climax and confrontation. Asterisk. Caleb confronts the senior doctors involved in the study, exposing their actions and the devastating consequences. The lie is exposed as unsustainable, and the weight of his brother's death becomes unbearable. Point 6. Final redemption, embracing the truth and healing, doing the right thing. After the confrontation, Caleb is presented with a final choice: either continue to live with the guilt and the lie, or to leak the evidence to the national media and expose the truth. This time, having undergone a transformation, he chooses to do the right thing, leading to healing, reconciliation, and growth. He makes amends for his initial inaction, takes responsibility for protecting his community, and steps into a more authentic version of himself. Emotional layer. Asterisk. 1. Character focus. Asterisk. Protagonist. Asterisk. Caleb, a young, idealistic black doctor. Protagonist: wound. Asterisk. His brother's mysterious death and his inability to save him. This leads him to believe he must trust the system to protect his community, a lie that causes him to neglect his own instincts and the suffering of his patients. His strong outside goal is to prove himself as a capable doctor and earn the respect of his community. Key supporting characters: asterisk. Sarah, the journalist; Dr. Thompson, a senior doctor involved in the study; and Isaiah, a patient suffering from syphilis. 2. Transformation arc. Asterisk. Initial state: asterisk. Idealistic but naive, trusting of the medical establishment, haunted by his brother's death. Final state: asterisk. Jaded but resolute, committed to justice, willing to risk everything to expose the truth, finds peace by honoring his brother's memory. 3. Relationships. Asterisk. Map. Asterisk. Caleb Doctor. Thompson, protagonist-antagonist. Begins as a mentor-mentee relationship, but devolves into a conflict of ideologies and ethics. Caleb Sarah, romantic ally. A childhood friendship that blossoms into a romantic relationship, providing Caleb with support and encouragement. Caleb Isaiah, patient. A bond of empathy and responsibility that motivates Caleb to take action. Arcs. Asterisk. These relationships evolve as Caleb uncovers the truth about the study, forcing him to confront his own beliefs and make difficult choices. 4. Turning points. Asterisk. Peak emotional events. Asterisk. Caleb discovering the truth about the study. Caleb confronting Dr. Thompson. Isaiah's death. Caleb leaking the evidence to the press. Climax. Asterisk. Caleb's decision to expose the study, knowing the personal and professional consequences. Catharsis. Caleb delivering a heartfelt speech at a community meeting, expressing his remorse and vowing to fight for justice. 5. True north relationship. Asterisk. The relationship that is damaged and needs to heal is with his deceased brother, whose memory haunts him. His understanding evolves from seeing his brother as a victim to recognizing him as a courageous truth seeker. He needs to heal this relationship to fix his wound. Thematic layer, asterisk. 1. Central question, asterisk, how far should one go to expose the truth? Scene, Sarah's newspaper office night. Caleb and Sarah huddled over a table in Sarah's cramped office, surrounded by stacks of documents and half-empty coffee cups. The only light came from a flickering desk lamp, casting long shadows across their faces. They were poring over the patient files, searching for any detail that could help them build their case. "We need to find someone on the inside," Sarah said, her voice low and urgent. "Someone who can confirm what's happening at the clinic." "That's going to be difficult," Caleb replied. "Everyone there is loyal to Dr. Thompson." "There has to be someone," Sarah insisted. "Someone who's willing to risk their career to do the right thing." They reviewed the list of clinic staff, searching for a name that stood out. Then, Sarah stopped at the name of Dr. Watkins, a young black doctor who had recently joined the clinic. "Dr. Watkins," she said. "I've heard he's a bit of a troublemaker, always questioning things, always pushing the boundaries." "He could be our guy," Caleb said. "But he's also ambitious," Sarah cautioned. "He wants to make a name for himself. He might be afraid to jeopardize his career." "We have to try," Caleb said. "He's our only hope." The next day, Caleb approached Dr. Watkins at the clinic. He found him in the break room, drinking a cup of coffee and reading a medical journal. "Dr. Watkins," Caleb said, his voice cautious. "Can I have a word with you?" Dr. Watkins looked up, his eyes wary. "What is it, Dr. Caleb?" Caleb hesitated for a moment, then decided to be direct. "I know about the syphilis study," he said, his voice low. "I know what's happening to those men." Dr. Watkins' eyes widened in shock. He glanced around the room, making sure they were alone. "How did you find out?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "It doesn't matter," Caleb replied. "What matters is that it's wrong. We have to stop it." Dr. Watkins looked conflicted. He opened his mouth to speak, but then hesitated, his eyes filled with fear. "I can't," he said. "I have a family to support. I can't risk my career." "But what about those men?" Caleb asked. "They're suffering, they're dying." "I know," Dr. Watkins said, his voice filled with despair. "But what can I do? I'm just one person." "You can help us expose the truth," Caleb said. "You can provide us with information. You can be a witness." Dr. Watkins shook his head, his eyes filled with fear. "I can't," he said. "I'm sorry." He turned and walked away, leaving Caleb standing alone in the break room, his hopes dashed. This happens. But Dr. Watkins' refusal to help, driven by fear for his career and family, highlighted the pervasive atmosphere of intimidation and the difficulty of finding allies within the clinic. Therefore, Caleb, disappointed but not defeated, resolved to continue his investigation, knowing that he would have to rely on his own resources and his unwavering commitment to justice. Approx. 600 words. Scene, Caleb's apartment night. Caleb sat at his kitchen table, staring at the patient files. He felt a sense of frustration and despair. He was running out of options. He needed more evidence, but he didn't know where to find it. He picked up his brother's medical journal, flipping through the pages. He stopped at a passage his brother had written about the importance of keeping detailed records. "The truth is in the details," his brother had written. "Pay attention to the small things. They will reveal the bigger picture." Caleb stared at the words, his mind racing. He thought about the clinic, about the records room, about the locked cabinet. He had already searched those places, but maybe he had missed something. He decided to go back to the clinic to search again. He knew it was a long shot, but he had nothing to lose. Later that night, Caleb slipped into the clinic, using a back entrance he knew from his late-night shifts. The clinic was dark and silent, the only sound his own footsteps echoing through the empty halls. He made his way to the records room, his heart pounding in his chest. He opened the door and stepped inside, his flashlight illuminating the dusty shelves. He began searching again, carefully examining each file, looking for any detail he had missed. He found nothing. He was about to give up when he noticed something out of the corner of his eye, a small, loose tile on the floor. He knelt down and pried the tile loose, revealing a small, hidden compartment. Inside, he found a stack of documents. He pulled them out and examined them, his eyes widening in shock. They were letters written by doctors and government officials discussing the Tuskegee study in detail. They confirmed everything he had suspected and more. They revealed the true scope of the study, the deliberate deception, the callous disregard for human life. He had found the smoking gun. As he gathered the documents, he heard a noise outside the door, footsteps. He quickly stuffed the letters into his briefcase and turned off his flashlight. The door creaked open and Dr. Thompson stepped into the room, his face illuminated by the moonlight. "Caleb," he said, his voice cold and menacing. "What are you doing here? This happens." But Caleb's discovery of the incriminating letters in the hidden compartment provided irrefutable evidence of the Tuskegee study, but also placed him in immediate danger, as Dr. Thompson discovered him in the act of stealing the documents. Therefore, Caleb, caught red-handed and facing imminent arrest or worse, prepared to confront Dr. Thompson, knowing that his life and the fate of the Tuskegee study hung in the balance. Approx. 600 words. Scene, clinic records room night. "I could ask you the same question, doctor," Caleb said, trying to sound more confident than he felt. Dr. Thompson stepped closer, his eyes narrowing. "Don't play games with me, Caleb," he said. "I know what you're up to. You've been snooping around, asking questions, stirring up trouble." "I'm just trying to do my job, doctor," Caleb replied. "I'm concerned about the health of my patients." "You're a fool, Caleb," Dr. Thompson said. "You don't understand the bigger picture. This study is important. It's for the greater good." "The greater good," Caleb scoffed. "At the expense of these men's lives? That's not right, doctor. That's not ethical." "Ethics are a luxury we can't afford," Dr. Thompson said. "Sometimes sacrifices have to be made." "I don't believe that," Caleb said. "I believe that every human life has value, and I'm not going to let you sacrifice these men for your twisted experiment." Dr. Thompson's face contorted with rage. "You're going to regret this, Caleb," he said. "You're going to regret ever crossing me." He lunged at Caleb, grabbing him by the throat. Caleb struggled to break free, but Dr. Thompson was too strong. He felt his air supply being cut off, his vision blurring. He knew he was going to die. Just as he was about to lose consciousness, he saw a flash of movement out of the corner of his eye. Nurse Evelyn rushed into the room, wielding a heavy metal lamp. She swung the lamp at Dr. Thompson, hitting him in the head. Dr. Thompson collapsed to the floor, unconscious. Caleb gasped for air, his throat burning. He looked at Nurse Evelyn, his eyes filled with gratitude. "Why?" he asked, his voice hoarse. "Why did you do that?" Nurse Evelyn looked at Caleb, her eyes filled with remorse. "I couldn't let him kill you, Caleb," she said. "I've been living with this guilt for too long. I can't be silent anymore. This happens." But Nurse Evelyn's unexpected intervention saved Caleb's life, but also revealed her complicity in the Tuskegee study and her long-held guilt, creating a complex and volatile alliance. Therefore, Caleb, now with Nurse Evelyn's help, faced the difficult decision of whether to trust her and work together to expose the truth, or to turn her in for her involvement in the study, knowing that her testimony could be crucial to bringing down the entire operation. Approx. 600 words. He is embraced by his closest friend, Sam. The camera lingers on the Rubik's Cube, now a symbol of self-acceptance and order in a world that embraces diversity. Symbolism. Example * Casablanca. Rick and Louie walking off into the fog, a symbol of hope and new beginnings. Improvements * 1. Use a wide shot to show Ethan surrounded by his supportive colleagues, emphasizing his newfound connection. 2. Add a scene where Ethan mentors other neurodivergent individuals, paying it forward and creating a more inclusive workplace. Final scene map * 1. Scene 60 words. A new beginning, acceptance and connection. # emotional layer * 1. Character focus ***. Protagonist * Ethan, a young man with autism. Protagonist wound * past trauma of being bullied for his autism, leading him to believe that he must hide his true self to be accepted. Key supporting characters * Sam best friend, Olivia love interest, Claire antagonist. 2. Transformation arc * Initial state asterisk anxious, isolated, and ashamed of his autism. Final state, asterisk confident, connected, and proud of his unique identity. 3 relationships, asterisk. Map asterisk. Ethan Clare, protagonist-antagonist, begins with subtle prejudice and escalates to open hostility, culminating in a confrontation and resolution. Ethan Sam, friendship, a supportive and loyal friendship that is tested by Ethan's attempts to hide his autism, but ultimately strengthens. Ethan Olivia, romantic, a connection based on shared experiences and mutual understanding, offering Ethan a glimpse of a life where he can be his true self. Arcs, asterisk, these relationships evolve as Ethan confronts his fears and embraces his authenticity. 4 turning points, asterisk. Peak emotional events, asterisk. Ethan being publicly humiliated by Claire. Ethan deciding to embrace his autism and stand up for himself. Ethan giving a speech about acceptance and diversity. Climax, asterisk, Ethan's confrontation with Claire. Catharsis, asterisk, Ethan's final speech and his embrace of Sam 5 true north relationship, asterisk. The relationship that is damaged and needs to heal is with himself. His understanding evolves from self-loathing to self-acceptance. Thematic layer, asterisk. 1. Central question, asterisk, is it better to hide your true self to succeed, or is authenticity the key to genuine connection and fulfillment? 2. Thematic conflict. The lie, prevailing assumption, asterisk, I must hide my autism to be accepted and successful. The truth, asterisk, my autism is a valuable part of who I am, and I deserve to be loved and respected for it. 3. Moral alignments. Ethan, asterisk, seeker of the truth. Claire, asterisk, proponent of the lie. Sam, asterisk, supporter of the truth. Olivia, asterisk, embodiment of the truth. 4. Subthemes, asterisk. Social commentary. Workplace discrimination, neurodiversity, the pressure to conform. Human nature, the capacity for both prejudice and compassion, the struggle between self-preservation and authenticity. Symbolism. The Rubik's Cube as a symbol of order, control, and self-acceptance. Seattle's weather as a metaphor for Ethan's emotional state. Scene suggestions. 1. A scene showing the stark contrast between Ethan's meticulously organized apartment and the chaotic, sensory-overloading workplace. 2. A scene where Ethan struggles to maintain his new persona, revealing the toll it takes on him. 3. A scene where Ethan has a meltdown at work, revealing the strain of suppressing his autism. 4. A scene where Ethan confronts Claire, challenging her prejudice and demanding justice. 5. A scene where Ethan gives a speech about acceptance and diversity, inspiring others to embrace their true selves. 5. Thematic resolution, asterisk. Closure. Ethan embraces his autism and finds success and fulfillment by being his authentic self. Call to action. Inspires viewers to challenge prejudice, embrace diversity, and celebrate the unique qualities of every individual. Locations and objects. Key story locations. The office, where Ethan works and faces discrimination. Ethan's apartment, a meticulously organized space reflecting his need for control. The coffee shop, a place where Ethan connects with Sam and discusses his struggles. The art museum, a place where Ethan shares his passion for design with Olivia. Key character locations. Protagonist home/base. What is the protagonist's space? A small, meticulously organized apartment. How does it physically express what they believe? Reflects his need for control and order. Antagonist base/lair. What is the antagonist's space? A large, opulent office. How does it physically express what they believe? Represents her power and ambition. Other character locations. What other important characters have their own space? Sam has a messy, creative studio. How does their space physically express what they believe? Represents his free-spirited nature and his support for Ethan's authenticity. Key Act 1 locations. What important locations are in Act 1? The office, Ethan's apartment, the coffee shop. Where does the Act 1 climax take place? The office, where Ethan is publicly humiliated. Key Act 2 locations. What important locations are in Act 2? The social skills workshop, the art museum, the coffee shop. Where does the Act 2 climax take place? The office, where Ethan delivers a successful presentation but feels empty inside. Key Act 3 locations. What important locations are in Act 3? The office, the HR department, the coffee shop. Where does the Act 3 climax take place? The HR department, where Ethan confronts Claire. Story items. What important items and symbols are attached to characters in your story? Character items. Protagonist items. His Rubik's Cube, a symbol of order, control, and self-acceptance. Antagonist items. Her designer handbag represents her status and ambition. Friend items. His paintbrush symbolizes his creativity and support for Ethan's authenticity. Love interest items. Her sketchbook represents her artistic talent and her ability to see the beauty in the world. Key location items. What important items do characters encounter in the key locations in your story? Act 1 key location items. Patient files at the office contain evidence of Claire's discrimination. Act 2 key location items. Artwork at the art museum inspire Ethan to embrace his creativity. Act 3 key location items. The evidence at the HR department proves Claire's guilt. #VI, plot and stakes. Make sure we always follow the principle of this happens, but in therefore, rule developed by South Park creators Trey Parker and Matt Stone. It involves structuring a story using the words, but and therefore to link events and create a sense of progression. Here's how it works. This happens, establish an initial event, but introduce a complication or obstacle. Therefore, show the consequence or reaction leading to a new development. Never have this happens and this happens. That's bad. We always need complications, obstacles, turning points, consequences, etc. Make sure you use these actual words in our outline for each beat. Plot development. I establish the foundation. Opening image. Theme stated. Setup. Depict the protagonist's wound. Opening image. Visually showcase Ethan's anxiety and isolation in the bustling office, highlighting his fear of judgment and his need for control. Introduce the moral dilemma. Themes stated. A conversation between Claire and Sam reveals opposing views on authenticity versus conformity, setting up the central thematic conflict. Frame the philosophical discourse. Setup. The story is established as a platform for examining the complexities of these contrasting perspectives. Develop the protagonist. Setup. Ethan initially believes that he must hide his autism to be accepted due to his past trauma of being bullied. Create a compelling antagonist. Setup. Claire is designed as an antagonist who embodies the belief that conformity is essential for success. Introduce the key relationship character. Setup. Sam is developed as a character who represents the opposing philosophical stance, encouraging Ethan to embrace his true self. Plant the key object, Chekhov's gun. Setup. Ethan is shown cherishing his Rubik's Cube, whose significance and purpose will be revealed later. The full story circle breakdown. This outline builds in the story circle for each act, creating a complete movement of drama in every single act in your story, complete with its own setup and climax. Act 1, story setup. 1 character status quo. Ethan works as a graphic designer, hiding his autism. 2 goal established. Ethan wants to succeed at his job. 3 inciting problem. Ethan is publicly humiliated by Claire. 4 choice of commitment. Ethan decides to try and cure his autism. 5 goal achieved. Ethan receives praise for his new skills. 6 surprise problem. Ethan feels empty and disconnected. 7 climactic choice. Ethan realizes he needs to embrace his true self. 8 new character status quo. Ethan decides to confront Claire. 9 Act 2, journey. 10 character status quo. Ethan is isolated and alone. 11 goal established. Ethan wants to expose Claire's prejudice. 12 inciting problem. Ethan faces resistance from his colleagues. 13 choice of commitment. Ethan decides to gather evidence. 14 goal achieved. Ethan presents the evidence to HR. 15 surprise problem. Claire denies the accusations. 16 climactic choice. Ethan delivers a powerful speech. 17 new character status quo, Ethan is praised for his courage. Scene, Nurse Evelyn's home night. Caleb followed Nurse Evelyn to her small, modest home on the outskirts of town. The house was dark and dilapidated, a reflection of the years of guilt and regret she had carried. They sat at her kitchen table, the only light coming from a single flickering candle. "Why, Evelyn?" Caleb asked, his voice filled with confusion. "Why did you help me?" Nurse Evelyn sighed, her eyes filled with tears. "I've been living with this secret for too long, Caleb," she said. "I can't be silent anymore. Those men, they're my neighbors, my friends, my family. I watched them suffer and I did nothing. I told myself it was for the greater good, that we were helping science. But it was a lie. It was all a lie." "But you were part of it," Caleb said. "You helped them." "I know," Nurse Evelyn said, her voice filled with remorse. "And that's why I can't forgive myself. But I can try to make amends. I can help you expose the truth. I know where the records are hidden, who is involved. I can testify in court." Caleb looked at Nurse Evelyn, his eyes filled with suspicion. Could he trust her? Was she telling the truth? Or was this some kind of trick? "Why should I believe you?" he asked. "You've been lying for years." "I know I've given you no reason to trust me," Nurse Evelyn said. "But I swear to you, Caleb, I'm telling the truth. I want to help. I need to help, for my own soul." Caleb hesitated for a moment, then made a decision. He had no other choice. He needed her help. "Okay, Evelyn," he said. "I'll trust you, but you have to be honest with me. No more lies." "I promise," Nurse Evelyn said. "I'll tell you everything." This happens. But Nurse Evelyn's offer of assistance and her promise to provide crucial information and testify in court presented a glimmer of hope, but also raised questions about her true motives and the reliability of her testimony, given her years of complicity in the Tuskegee study. Therefore, Caleb, cautiously accepting Nurse Evelyn's help, began working with her to gather evidence and plan their next move, knowing that their alliance was fragile and that the truth could have devastating consequences for both of them. Approx. 600 words. Scene, Sarah's newspaper office day. Caleb and Nurse Evelyn met with Sarah at her newspaper office. They laid out all the evidence they had gathered: the letters, the patient files, Nurse Evelyn's testimony. Sarah listened intently, her eyes widening with each new revelation. "This is huge," she said. "This could be the biggest story of the year." "But it's also dangerous," Caleb said. "Dr. Thompson and his allies won't let us expose them without a fight." "We have to be careful," Sarah said. "We have to protect ourselves." "What about the men?" Nurse Evelyn asked. "What about their families? They deserve to know the truth." "They will know the truth," Sarah said. "But we have to do this right. We have to build a solid case, one that can't be refuted. We have to be prepared for anything." They spent hours poring over the documents, organizing the evidence, and planning their strategy. Sarah agreed to publish the story in her newspaper, but she insisted on waiting until they had all their ducks in a row. "We can't afford to make any mistakes," she said. "We only get one shot at this." As they were leaving the office, Caleb received a phone call. It was Dr. Watkins. "Caleb," he said, his voice urgent. They know you're investigating the study. They're coming for you." Caleb's heart sank. He had been so focused on gathering evidence that he had forgotten about his own safety. "Thank you, Watkins," he said. "I appreciate the warning." He hung up the phone and turned to Sarah and Nurse Evelyn. "We have to go," he said. "They're coming." This happens. But Dr. Watkins' warning that they were about to be targeted by Dr. Thompson and his allies forced them to go on the run, jeopardizing their efforts to expose the study and putting their lives in immediate danger. Therefore, Caleb, Sarah, and Nurse Evelyn, now fugitives, had to find a way to protect themselves and continue their mission, knowing that time was running out and that their enemies were closing in. Approx. 600 words. Scene, safe house night. Caleb, Sarah, and Nurse Evelyn found refuge in a small, secluded cabin in the woods, far from the prying eyes of Dr. Thompson and his allies. They knew they couldn't stay there forever, but it was a safe place to regroup and plan their next move. "We need to get this story out there," Sarah said. "We can't let them silence us." But how? Caleb asked. We're fugitives, we can't go to the police, we can't trust anyone. There's one person we can trust, Nurse Evelyn said. A reporter at the New York Times. I met her at a medical conference years ago. She's a good journalist, and she's not afraid to take on tough stories. Do you have her contact information? Sarah asked. Yes, Nurse Evelyn said. I'll call her. Nurse Evelyn made the call, explaining the situation to the reporter and outlining the evidence they had gathered. The reporter was skeptical at first, but after hearing Nurse Evelyn's testimony and reviewing the documents, she agreed to investigate the story. I can't promise anything, she said, but I'll do my best. They waited anxiously for days, not knowing if the reporter would come through or if Dr. Thompson would find them first. The tension was unbearable. One night, as they were sitting around the campfire, they heard a noise in the woods. Footsteps. They froze, their hearts pounding in their chests. They're here, Caleb whispered. They found us. This happens. But their refuge in the secluded cabin was compromised, as they heard footsteps in the woods, signaling that Dr. Thompson and his allies had found them, forcing them to make a desperate stand. Therefore, Caleb, Sarah, and Nurse Evelyn, facing imminent capture, prepared to defend themselves and the evidence they had gathered, knowing that their survival and the fate of the Tuskegee study depended on their ability to outwit their pursuers. Approx. 600 words. Scene: cabin in the woods night. Caleb grabbed a shotgun from the cabin wall, his hands trembling. Sarah grabbed a knife, her eyes filled with determination. Nurse Evelyn, despite her age, stood her ground, her face resolute. They waited in silence, listening to the footsteps getting closer and closer. Suddenly, the cabin door burst open, and Dr. Thompson and two of his henchmen stormed inside. It's over, Caleb, Dr. Thompson said, his voice cold and menacing. You can't run anymore. We're not running, Caleb replied, raising the shotgun. We're fighting back. A fierce gun battle ensued. Caleb and Sarah fought bravely, but they were outnumbered and outgunned. Nurse Evelyn, despite her age, managed to take down one of the henchmen with a well-aimed shot, but Dr. Thompson was too powerful. He disarmed Caleb and Sarah, pinning them to the ground. You should have listened to me, Caleb, Dr. Thompson said, his voice filled with contempt. Now you're going to pay the price. Just as Dr. Thompson was about to pull the trigger, Nurse Evelyn lunged at him, tackling him to the ground. They wrestled for the gun, their bodies rolling across the floor. Suddenly, a shot rang out. Nurse Evelyn slumped to the ground, dead. Dr. Thompson stood up, the gun in his hand, his face covered in blood. That's one less loose end, he said. Caleb and Sarah looked at Nurse Evelyn's lifeless body, their hearts filled with grief and rage. They knew they had to avenge her death. This happens. But Nurse Evelyn's sacrifice bought Caleb and Sarah a chance to escape, but at a great cost, leaving them grief-stricken and determined to avenge her death. Therefore, Caleb and Sarah, fueled by grief and rage, vowed to expose the Tuskegee study, no matter the cost, knowing that they were now fighting not only for justice, but also for revenge. Approx. 600 words. Scene: New York Times office day. Caleb and Sarah, battered and bruised but determined, arrived at the New York Times office. They met with the reporter, showing her the evidence they had gathered and recounting their harrowing experiences. The reporter listened intently, her eyes filled with compassion and admiration. You're incredibly brave, she said. What you've done is extraordinary. We just want the truth to come out, Caleb said. We want justice for those men. You'll get it, the reporter said. I promise you this story will be heard. The New York Times published the story the following day. It was a bombshell. The article detailed the horrors of the Tuskegee study, exposing the deliberate deception, the callous disregard for human life, and the government's complicity in the unethical experiment. The nation was outraged. Protests erupted across the country. Congress launched an investigation. Dr. Thompson and his allies were arrested and charged with multiple crimes. The Tuskegee study was shut down, and the victims and their families were compensated. Caleb and Sarah watched the news unfold, their hearts filled with a mix of relief and sadness. They had achieved their goal, but at a great cost. Nurse Evelyn was gone, and the scars of their experiences would never fully heal. But they had made a difference. They had exposed the truth, brought justice to the victims, and helped prevent such atrocities from happening again. As Caleb reflected on the events that had transpired, he realized that his brother's death had not been in vain. His brother's pursuit of truth had inspired him to take action and fight for what was right. In the end, Caleb found a measure of peace, knowing that he had honored his brother's memory and made the world a better place. The final image shows Caleb visiting his brother's grave, placing a copy of the New York Times article on the tombstone. He smiles, knowing that his brother's spirit can finally rest in peace. The end. Approx. 600 words. Leah,